With nursing and learning military stuff, that I still double think, okay, is noon 12 a.m. or 12 p.m.? Like, I have to stop. I think it's instead of 12 and 24. Yeah, it doesn't make any sense to me, because we should be super early in the morning at 12 p.m. and things like that. Yeah.
All right, it is.
There we go. It's close enough to 5:45, and we'll call the meeting to order. Let's start with roll call.
Amy Riddle Swanson.
Here.
Mark Hillman.
Here.
Angie Skilling.
Here.
Carl Palmer.
Here.
Abe Smith.
Here.
Dominique Stewart.
Here.
Rachel Henderson.
Here.
Dale Dahlke.
Here.
Amber Kirsting.
Here. And we have a quorum. Let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our mission statement, the school district of the Menomonie area, by embracing the unique needs and using the strengths of our diverse community, is dedicated to preparing all students to become lifelong learners, caring individuals, and responsible citizens. Does anyone have any revisions to the agenda order tonight? Seeing none, we will move on to recommendations and commendations. We have one this evening that Dominique is going to present.
We haven't had one in the school year.
All right, is Gabrielle Schultz here? You can come on up. Gabrielle Schultz is a NAPCR educator, and we thank her for taking on more responsibilities this year and being willing to help with whatever is needed. She's been flexible with her schedule and duties in the absence of the Educational Support Specialist Supervisory Aide. Gabby is an excellent asset to NAP students and staff. Thank you.
Thank you, Gabby. And next we have community communications. We have just one this evening from Danny Gibson.
Hello, my name is Dan Gibson. I live at 1710 West 5th Street in Menomonie, Wisconsin. So, thank you, school board, for allowing me to speak again. At the last board meeting, there was a speaker who talked about the definition of gender and rainbow, and so I want to talk about my viewpoint. So, that's the amendment gender policy. I really appreciate that we have that policy. It really provides safety net. So one of the things I love about speaking is when you cite sources. So in two studies that I want to highlight, one is a 2019 research study by Dr. Michael Morsel, who interviewed over 2,000 respondents. Around half of them were trans students from the age of 14 to 18. 85% of the transgender individuals thought about suicide ideation, and that is whether or not they had a plan or they in their case or someone. And over half of them attempted. The elevated rates are caused through psychological stress and victimization, such as transgender females experience both sexual assault, both physically and sexual assault among other, more than any other counterpart, around 52% of that age from 14 to 18. And the person who works in college, we tell sexual assault is 1, 2, 3 for females and 1 to 4 for males. When you look at the transgender one, it's 1 to 2. So the second study was published in an article from Medical News Today. It was a 2019 study by Dr. Ian Colson, and so it talked about 7.6 times more likely trans individuals will attempt suicide. And when teens press into sexuality, it doubled the risk. And so when we have this policy in the school that can really support all students who might be gender non-conforming. So the second aspect is a rainbow. We heard last time about the definition of a rainbow that it was actually from the Menomonie. So I want to provide with the scientific definition of a rainbow. A rainbow is an optimistic phenomenon caused by refraction and internal reflection and dislocation of light and water droplets, resulting in a continuous spectrum of light appearing in the sky. And so this is one that you really Google, what is a rainbow, and it gives you the definition. So I want to dig deeper into what a rainbow is by putting in Wikipedia. Wikipedia is a site that we probably wouldn't cite, but I want to cite this because there's a section there called Rainbow Mythology. And the first one, so mythology definition is neither history or science. Mythology is considered fiction, aka stories made up by people to explain reality, and that science, history and science are based on facts. And so when we look at rainbow, the first step to talk about Genesis book chapter 9, the story.
I'm sorry, that's 3 minutes.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you. Next up, we have the personnel consent agenda. We'll entertain a motion. Oh, there's nothing in the personnel consent agenda. All right, now to the action agenda. First on the action agenda is the adoption of the 2023-2024 budget. And we have a motion to, hold him with a motion.
I so move we approve the budget as presented.
I'll second.
Motion by Carl, second by Amber. Any discussion?
Rachel, if I may, I just want to say thank you to the board members and to Leah and her staff, also all the building principals, department heads. You all know that this is a very long process. This is a year's worth of work that comes tonight for the budget to be approved. Some of the major aspects of it, all of the staffing plan, compensation plans, which actually lead back to student requests for classes, all of the budget builders that we get from the teachers and other people in the buildings, and then review by the principals to Leah, the district directors, and then it's all put together for the preliminary budget, which the board reviews in the summer. Then that preliminary budget is brought to the annual meeting in August. We had the annual meeting, we had a real nice turnout. I think there was, might have been unanimous approval, I believe, for the preliminary budget and the tax levy. And then all the work comes in the fall, and we get our third Friday of September count. We get our 8th certification from the state, also the valuation from the municipalities. And finally, we're here at the end of October with our budget. So again, thank you to everyone for all the hard work on this. We know budgeting has been more and more difficult, and certainly it's going to continue to get more difficult. But I think we have a really good budget for the year. Thank you.
Board members, any questions about the budget documents we have before us? All right, that's easy. Seeing none, we can vote. And motion passes unanimously. Next up, we have related item to for certification of the 2023-2024 tax levy. Do we have a motion to approve?
So moved, Dave.
I'll second.
Motion by Abe, second by Amy. Anything with this?
Sure, and Leah certainly could jump in too, but board members, you have the information in front of you. As you can see, the valuation in the school district has gone up quite a bit. As part of the valuation, along with the state aid that we receive, the resulting mill rate, I just need to make this a little bit bigger. The resulting mill rate will be $5.69 per thousand. And you can see that that's the lowest the mill rate has, I believe, probably ever been in the school district. And if we just go back a few years ago, the mill rates were in the 8s and $9.41 back in the preliminary budget for 2019-2020. So the mill rate has dropped significantly, and again, a big product of that is because of the increased valuation.
Questions or comments about the mill rate, or the tax levy? All right. Seeing none, let's vote. And motion passes unanimously. Next, we have the renewal of our 2024 district health insurance. Entertain a motion.
So moved.
All right, you gotta say what you're moving.
Draft break into the proposal.
Sure, we have a proposal here with multiple parts. So we could, I guess we would seek a motion to approve all of proposal 1, 2, and 3 as presented.
I did put the recommendation in board docs if you want to make a motion to approve.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Recommendation as presented.
Number 2 and number 3. Yes. I saw it too.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see that this afternoon.
Move to accept proposal 2 and 3 as presented in board docs.
Great, thank you.
Second?
All right, motion by Amber, second by Abe. Discussion?
So, similar to the budget, not quite as long, but you know we've been talking about health insurance for really over a year, knowing that there were going to be challenges ahead. And appreciate the work of everyone who had their hand in this, including the Health Medical Committee, the staff members that provided input along the way, as well as the board members who were involved in that committee. And certainly Carl, Rachel, please feel free to add. But essentially what this proposal does is it provides an additional option for SDMA staff, which would be a high deductible health plan option. We do not have that option currently. The high deductible health plan will help mitigate the increases that is about a 19% renewal on our current plan, which just is not very feasible from a budgeting standpoint. The high deductible health plan option provides a more affordable plan for the school district, but it is more challenging for employees with the deductibles that are included. Through the savings, however, with the high deductible health plan, the school district will be able to make contributions towards HSAs for the employees who choose that plan. For the employees who do not choose that plan, they will have the option to pay a higher premium to continue on the ACO plan. That premium difference will be provided by the employee. However, with some of the savings from the high deductible health plan and the movement in our insurance proposal, we will be able to provide a little bit of relief for both the single and family premiums. Proposal number 3 has to do with providing a more affordable single plan option for our school year hourly employees, where the district will make a higher contribution towards those premium levels. We do have benefit presentations scheduled across the school district that will begin this week ahead of the open enrollment period that will be happening in November. Carl or Rachel, anything you wanted to add to that?
On number 3, it's the individual plan, I think.
The single plan,
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't have really anything to add. I think that Dr. Zadowski did a really good job of communicating the process out to the staff. We were CC'd. There's no hidden numbers or anything with what's coming out tonight. Staff have had the opportunity to see that. We've gotten feedback No specific way of doing this is perfect for every employee, and everyone on the board recognizes that. But taking everything into account, this is a reasonable approach to try and meet as many needs as possible.
Yeah, I'd agree with that, and I think the materials we have in board docs and that have also been shared out with staff over the last couple of weeks, and have been updated continuously, looks like, I think are doing a pretty good job of sort of addressing the questions that come up, trying to figure out the best way to communicate and the best way to help people figure out how to meet their family's needs. Yeah, any other discussion? Do you want to say anything?
And I just want to say, I think, we talked about this previously, I think that for as complicated and subtle and just intricate as this whole thing is, I think you did a very good job, the whole team, of like finding a balance between making sure it's sustainable and also giving employees lots of different options that are appropriate to what their needs are. I think, the healthcare industry is very, and I think that, I hope that, district employees will see that there's a way through, if they look at these plans and think through what's good for their family, I think they'll find a way that is both affordable and gives them, the healthcare they need. So, good job on putting it all together.
Yeah, I really appreciate all the work that Dr. Zadowski and Sam and Leah put into this. If there's no other discussion, we can go ahead and vote. And final item on our action agenda is certification of the Oaklawn safety drill.
I move we approve it, the safety drill.
All right, motion by Carl, second by Mark. Any discussion of the Oaklawn safety drill?
I would just point out that typically we would put this in the consent agenda, but in order to meet all the deadlines, we wanted to make sure we get this approved tonight. There was a safety drill at Oaklawn Elementary on October 12th. All of our buildings host safety drills, and you can see that there was a planned evacuation. All the students and staff prepared for, hopefully an emergency that will never happen. At the same time, you can see the report from the building principal, and it looks like everyone did a good job. So we recommend your certification of the drill.
Any questions or discussion? Then let's vote. And motion passes unanimously. All right, into the discussion agenda. First up, we have a review of the 2023 state assessment report.
So Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum Instruction, Brian Sagan, will present this report to the board. Brian, go ahead.
All right, thank you. This is an annual report where we give a status update on the state level assessments that are taken throughout the district each spring. So last March and into April, students in grades 3 through 11 participate in state level assessments for the academic content areas of English language arts, math, science, and social studies. The information that's presented tonight does have some historical context to it, but it's important to note that last spring's assessment results are just simply that. They're the snapshot from last spring on how the students did on the Wisconsin Forward exam. The ACT assessment that students take in the 11th grade, and not a new assessment, but a new assessment to our students in 9th and 10th grade, the pre-ACT secure exam. which replaced the ACT Aspire exam that had been given previously in the state. We do have a small percentage of students each year that those state level assessments aren't appropriate for, who will participate in an alternate assessment that's referred to as the dynamic learning maps. Generally speaking, the target student participation in the alternate assessment is 1% or fewer of our students, where most students will then take the other identified state assessments. So a little backdrop on that. So when we take a look from a general big picture point of view across the state, we are seeing general increases in overall proficiency rates across the state of Wisconsin and in our district since students returned to in-person instruction following the statewide shutdown to in-person instruction that occurred in the spring of 2020. With that being said, when we take a look at the academic content areas of English language arts, math, science, and social studies, with the exception of English language arts at the middle level, our students are either at or above the state comparable as far as percent of students who are being identified as proficient or advanced on our state assessments, which is a good thing. When we take a look at breaking that down into each of the different categories, in English language arts for grades 3 through 8, not only are we seeing increases in overall proficiency levels, we're seeing that the last assessment that students took prior to the spring of 2020, we actually have a higher percent of students proficient in those combined grades, which is a target that we've been striving for since returning. The state as a whole in the district did see a dip in overall proficiency levels that first year back from the statewide shutdown. Then when we take a look at breaking down by the grade levels, we've seen some nice growth in the elementary levels as a result of the hard work of our students and staff, as we've taken a look at updates to several resources that we're using, as well as ongoing professional development for staff. In the middle grades, as I referenced before, we have seen a decrease in overall proficiency levels over the last 3 years. During that time frame, our staff have taken a look at not only our scope and sequence, but also resources that we're using, and taking a look at our intervention approach at the middle school to help better align our instructional practices with the standards that the students are being assessed at those grade levels, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later on. Flipping the page to math, at the elementary level, and we take a look at our 3-8 combined, we've seen some nice rebound since the spring of 2021 when our students took the state assessments, and that is another area where we see overall proficiency levels above those pre-pandemic levels. So that is something that we're very proud of as we work towards making sure that our students are prepared. Science and social studies, those assessments are a little different in relation to the grade levels that they're given. With science and social studies, grades 4 and 8 take both the social studies and science assessments, and then 10th grade takes a social studies assessment, and 11th graders take a science assessment. So it's not every grade every year, it's more of a every few years that students are taking that. Again, in both of those categories, we're seeing that our students in the SDMA are either at or above the state comparable. Social studies is an area at the high school level where we haven't seen the same level of proficiency that historically we've seen at the elementary and middle grades. As we've dug into that, we've identified a number of different factors that we think play a part in that. But what we have taken a look at in response to not only looking at the standards that students are being assessed on, but also instructional approaches. A few years ago, we took some time to take a look at our scope and sequence at the high school, and this year we have begun the implementation of a U.S. history component in the 9th grade that historically wasn't there, as well as in the 10th grade. And then students in 11th grade participate in civics. So we've incorporated a little more U.S. history in both those 9th and 10th grade in response to some of the pieces that we've seen. And that being said, we have always had U.S. history at the high school, but that's an area that we've made some adjustments in. So then that brings me to our high school assessments, the pre-ACT secure and the ACT assessment. Pre-ACT secure being a new assessment, I don't have a historical comparison because we haven't given that test in the past. But what we see with the pre-ACT secure in both 9th and 10th grade, if we take those two grades together, but then also separate them out as individuals, we do have more students proficient on that exam than the state comparable, which is nice to see the first year we give that assessment. And then as we roll into our ACT assessment, this last year, the overall composite score was slightly below that of the state comparable, which is the same thing that we saw a year ago. We did notice when we were digging through the information that while it's below the state, we noticed that our district was one of a handful of districts in the region that saw an increase over the previous year's composite score, and we matched the increase that the state saw with the state composite score. It's important to note that with it being the 11th grade test, that's a different cohort of students each year that takes that test. They only take it one time. So, as we look at trends over time, that's something we're going to continue to watch. So then, what does that all mean, and what do we do with the information? I think is an important thing for us to spend a little bit of time on this evening. So included in the background, as well as the report, when we take a look, our high school staff, both departments and content areas within the department, have included as part of their goals that we reported on earlier this year, that they're taking a look at the level of questioning that the ACT College Career Readiness Standards, which dovetail with the Wisconsin State Standards within the content areas as well. They've begun a process of taking a look at those standards and the level of proficiency that students have to demonstrate to have a detailed understanding of the content. And to take a look at the coursework that students are participating in to make sure that we have a close alignment to that level of rigor and expectation with that assessment as part of the coursework on a daily basis, as well as their assessments. Mr. Drake and the high school team have been spending time on that, started that work last year and continued that into this year. In addition, English Language Arts at the high school last year did a unit analysis of not only the scope and sequence, but the types of activities that are taking place within the courses to help with that work as well. In addition, when we take a look at our middle school with English Language Arts, last year we piloted an updated scope and sequence as well as resources. The resources referred to as Common Lit, which includes several components that when we take a look at the standards that students are being assessed at, matches up really well with those state standards. And it's given the middle school language arts department, as we've had some staff turnover in that building, an opportunity to collaborate not only on content, but then also how they're approaching their instruction with those students. So after piloting that last year, they've made some instructional changes to that for this year, and that's also part of the goals that the middle school has set, to spend some time working on that. And then that brings me to some of the other pieces that we take a look at throughout the district as far as work that we're doing. A year ago, we implemented an updated set of resources in grades 3 through 5 that align with many of the expectations of Wisconsin Act 20 that we learned about this summer that we need to be implementing this year. We selected a resource that aligns very well with that. And then this year we are implementing that resource at grades K2 as well. as we then take a look at, how do we continue to move forward in the area of math, Wisconsin, over the last 3 years, has been working through what they refer to as phase 1, 2, and 3 rollout of our current set of math standards in the state of Wisconsin. We're rolling into phase 3 of that. So we've had staff participate in in-district professional learning around those expectations, led by instructional math coaches and our building level interventionists. And one of our current instructional coaches is participating in what's referred to as phase 3 rollout of those math standards, which centers around assessment to help us with continuing to move forward in making sure that the progress that we're making in the area of math continues to yield the results that we're looking at. So then when we take a look at our different demographic groups in our district, I've included some summaries as far as how our students with disabilities, are economically disadvantaged, as well as our English language learning students, or our EL students, are performing. And included in the report, you can see that in most cases, their performance is relatively consistent with prior years, as well as improving from one year to the next. One of the unique challenges that we have within our demographic groups is because each year we will gain a new set of students that participate in our state level assessments, and at each level each year we'll have a grade level that drops off. It's really a rolling cohort that we're looking at, so the names and faces change each year, so we all have to keep that take that into consideration as we move forward. So, all that being said, from my observation, if we take a look year after year, we're seeing in most cases a general upward trend or improvement in most of our categories, remaining consistent in some of the other ones, and then really right now when we take a look at what our greatest area of emphasis right now as far as focus, we need to continue to spend some time making some adjustments at the middle level in the area of English language arts, and at our high school level, we need to continue to monitor to see if what we're seeing with our current 9th and 10th graders, which is a performance level above the state comparable, how that rolls into next school year, or this school year I should say, over the next couple of years as it relates to the ACT. And with that being said, I feel that our teams at the building levels have done, I think, a pretty good job of identifying where the needs are and building that into the building goals that they set over the summer before this information was readily available, and then we confirm those areas. And I feel that many of our plans that we have in place are going in the right direction, or addressing the correct things. And that being said, it doesn't mean that the work is done by any means, but I think we are aligning our efforts where they need to be at this point. So with that, I'm happy to take any questions. I threw a lot at you.
I'm curious, when you look at an issue like the ELA performance at the middle school level, for example, or the social studies performance at the high school level, how much you're able to tease out if there's a curriculum change that needs to happen at that middle school level, or a curriculum change that needed to happen at the elementary school level? Like, where are the deficiencies coming, or the lack of proficiency coming in? Is it right there, or is it back upstream? Yeah.
Yep. So data tends to behave in predictable patterns. And that's why, not only this report, but then a report that you'll see in a few weeks when we take a look at our state report cards. I really put a lot of weight in our trends over time. And the short answer is what we're seeing at our middle school is not a surprise to us, because we saw similar trends at the elementary level, and we made some adjustments because of that, which I think not only is helping our current elementary students, but did provide some groundwork for our middle school plan. So we knew that we were having some needs that weren't being met at elementary, so we had to adjust for that. When we took a look at what we were doing at the middle school, we also knew that we were going to have to make some changes, not just curricular, but how we were approaching academic intervention. And then within the state assessments, what they do also provide is a report out on not the individual standards on that state assessment, but standard areas. So, speaking and listening, for example, comprehension. And we can tease out some of that information and then compare that to what classroom teachers are seeing day in and day out to help inform that. And yes, at the elementary level and at the middle school, as we took a look at those needs and took a look at what we're currently utilizing, we saw, yes, we needed to make some curriculum changes. In some cases, it's more about a skill deficiency.
Is it possible to tease out the years of these assessments? It's grades 3 through 5 and 6 through 8. Do you have the actual 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 out separately in your data? It seems to me, comparing 3 to 5 and 6 to 8 is, you definitely see this one's got a dip there, this one's got a dip there, or a bump here, or a bump here. And I imagine that what we're actually seeing is a shock wave moving up through the years, and that what was a dip in 21, maybe in 3-5, is now having done effects year by year. And I think it's actually notable if you think about that timeline that the gain we see in 3 to 5, say ELA, right, is steeper than the leveling that we see in 6 through 8. And so that means that if that is a pandemic dip, which is being moved forward in time, it's actually getting smaller in terms of those deficiencies. So I think actually there is a gain on an individual basis based on this data. It's just kind of hard to read when you have so many other contingencies in there. So I'm curious if that matches your intuition, or?
So the short answer is in some cases, yes. And then the other thing, when we take a look at our data over time, not only do we see some cohort groups as they work through, and this is even pre-pandemic, we'll see some cohort groups that will have a lower overall proficiency, and essentially that rolls all the way through. That being said, across the state, within our own district, and to an extent, even though there are different assessments across the nation, in the middle grades, we tend to see a pretty steep decrease in overall proficiency levels, regardless of cohort group, when they hit 8th grade. And there are lots of potential reasons for that, but we tend to see that, and then we see a bump in 9th grade, and then we tend to see a dip as students work forward through to 11th grade. At the elementary level, that dip usually happens in 4th grade. So we see 3, 4, and then a climb to 8th, and then a bump again at 9th grade.
And that's exactly why the comparison to the statewide and regional averages is so important, because you can see those trends. One specific question is, I wonder, a lot of your kind of in the list of things things are being done to kind of improve proficiency throughout, especially in middle school and high school in those assessments. I think a lot of this is about, your responsibility is about curriculum and instructional design. I'm curious about your thoughts on resourcing. I see there's the one item about adding interventionists, or was it listed? Let me find this section here. Work being done. So there's year 2 math and ELA interventionist positions at the high school level, right? So there's a case where there's actually additional resourcing happening. As the board, our kind of one of our really sole concerns is resourcing, right? So are there other resource questions that are on your mind about that middle school and high school level that could be advantageous if we kind of think ahead, not asking for any quotes or anything, just thinking ahead.
So I think the board has done a really good job of being responsive to those requests over time. We include the year 2 with the math and ELA interventionist position at the high school because that was a new component. But if we go back to last spring, our discussion about intervention resources in the district, we've added considerable resources in staffing for the purpose of being responsive to student academic as well as student behavioral needs as well. I'd say more on the academic piece, in response to some of the academic concerns we saw coming out of the pandemic, which I would say were present before the pandemic. They were just brought, probably more to the forefront at that point in time. Right now, well, yes, would we love to have more resources to be able to put, to students? I feel that we have very adequate resources, and it's about how we use that staffing, which a lot of the work we're doing right now is on taking a look at both best practice, but also what are some things that we're finding are working at different levels, and working our way through that. But yeah, I mean, that's how we use the resources. Having the curricular resources is one piece, but then how we use the human capital is I would say, as important, if not more important, and that we learn from each other on that. And I think our staff are doing a very thorough job in that.
If I could just add, when we talk about student success, there's a lot that needs to be considered. This certainly is a very big piece, the raw student achievement scores. But we also then talk about student growth, and I think when we get to the report cards next month, and we have the report about the state accountability report cards, that factors in a little bit more. Then we're talking about student growth, we're talking about on track to graduate, predictive factors of future success. And then our report card 2.0 goes even further and talks about student involvement in activities, student being ready to enter the workforce, and what we do with transition activities and such. So this is one of the big important pieces, but it is a piece. I think it's important to remember that. And I know, Amy, you always remind us that when we talk about the student achievement scores, how it's a piece, and what we do is a lot more than this. And it's always amazing to me how much work goes in from our staff members to get to this point. I don't really like this report as much because it's just pulling out that one piece, but I think it is very valuable for us to look at it and consider it.
Any other questions for Brian on the assessment overview? Or comments or thoughts?
I can't help but ask one.
Yeah.
So, when you look at the state average on nearly all of these, there's maybe one or two where the state average is 50% proficient at any of these age ranges. And it reminds me of being in organic Camden College where none of us could get a 40%, so it was curved, right? And so part of me is asking, well, why is the bar set so high that we can't, as a state, perform at 50% on what's being measured? Are we measuring the wrong things? Are we measuring, are we measuring a year ahead of what we should be? I guess it's a dumb question maybe, but.
So, my comment on that is, regardless of how we feel about where the threshold is put, an analysis of the Wisconsin standards and also benchmarks, it has been identified time and time again that Wisconsin has some of the most rigorous benchmarks and thresholds for academic success. And one of the things that the state of Wisconsin tried to do and did would have been in the early 2000s was they took a look at the NAEP assessment. So that's a national test that districts are randomly selected across the nation to participate. We have 2 schools this year that will participate in that NAEP assessment. You hear about the nation's report card, they call it. So what the state did was they aligned those benchmarks and thresholds to the state assessment. So if you take a look at percentage of students who are proficient on our state assessment, it will match up relatively close to the percent of students who are proficient if they also took that NAEP assessment. Is the conversation or the question that was asked, well, 80% of your students are proficient on your state assessment, but then when we roll around to this national assessment, only 44% of them are proficient. What's going on? So they try to align those at that point in time. So it's a little history or background.
Brian, could you comment on the difference between Menomonie and other Big River Chicago schools?
So as far as one of the things that I think we need to be aware of is while we're all in the same conference, the demographic makeup of the districts throughout our conference are very different from each other. So when you take a look at not only Menomonie's proficiency levels over time, and you compare it to another district, you may see a very different story on some of those assessments. And what we know is different demographic groups tend to perform at different levels on any standardized assessment. So one of the things that I like to take a look at is not so much the proficiency level of Menomonie in relation to another district, but do the trends that we're seeing with our data match the trends that we're seeing in other districts? So if one district is seeing an increase in their trend and the state is seeing an increase in their trend line, do we all well? Or if we see a dip, is that dip showing up other places? Because when you take a look at the overall performance over time, we really need to be comparing ourselves to ourselves and where our students, and this talks a little, or gets to a little bit what Joe was talking about, the growth over time.
Here's also some charts. I don't know if you've looked them up.
Maybe.
There's some charts that sort of show some comparisons, but I like your assessment.
Any other questions on the assessment report? Move on to the virtual education report.
So as Mrs. Thompson comes up to the microphone, I'd just like to make a couple comments to set the stage. First of all, we've had virtual education in the school district for many years. Some people think that it just started when the pandemic hit. That's not the case. We had virtual education options before the pandemic, and then certainly during the pandemic, it became very, very well used. And then since the pandemic, it's really dropped off. But Mrs. Thompson is here. She's the associate principal at the high school. And the high school really has taken a lot of the responsibility for our virtual education program. You'll recall that during the pandemic, it really was more of a district level leadership because we really had it going K-12 for a while. But most of our virtual education is at the high school, and Mrs. Thompson is here to report on that.
So,
Pull your microphone up.
okay. So taking a look at the handout that I gave you, as you can see, we're only in the first half of 2023-24. We have full-time students who basically don't really come into our building at all. They just meet virtually with their instructors and go through the curriculum. We have support in-house to check in with our students who are full-time virtual, making sure that they're doing due diligence, keeping up with their homework, communicating with parents, and then being a liaison between our WBS that we contract with, as well as with our students. We do have a few students who take credit recovery through WBS, but for the most part, we have other entities and other different resources for students who are recovering credits. A number of students each year take AP courses when they don't quite fit into their schedule. I think specifically about kids who get to that fourth year and they're sitting in a French floor and there's only one section of that, and the other AP classes that they want to take. There are options for students to take them in their their schedule. So we do have a few students who will try and take a course. We also offer some AP courses that we can't offer in the building simply because we don't have enough kids enrolled. And then we do have part-time students, and that's where the majority of the students at the high school take virtual courses. These are students who, for various reasons, are taking courses that we don't offer, like Latin would be a great example, an American Sign Language course we don't offer, or a gaming course we don't offer, that they also offer in our virtual programming. And then we do have a number of students who are taking our, some of our courses through like CBTC and UW Stout who then can't fit certain classes into their schedule. So we can use WBS as a way to help fit their schedule the way they need to. So as you can see, we have some historical data that has happened from a number of different WBS coordinators over the years, but we have also included in this information the number of students who are passing classes and the rate at which they pass some of these courses. What we see historically is that the number of students who take a course or two do very, very well in our WBS courses. The number of students who are full-time virtual either do really well or not. And then what we're trying to do on the back end is, of course, coach students and families before they enter virtual programming in a full-time capacity on what that would look like, and the pros and cons, and the amount of time that you need to dedicate to that. We see a lot of our full-time students who are trying to manage full-time jobs, actually, and still be full-time students at the high school. So, yeah, that's it in a nutshell.
Board members.
Board members, I just want to point out that the numbers really are interesting. You know, if you look at the total students involved in 2020, 2021, 300 students. That was up from 62 the year before, and now it's back down to 57. So you can definitely see the impact of the pandemic in the number of students selecting virtual education. I am a little surprised that it's dropped as far as it has. I know some people preferred the virtual option for more reasons than the pandemic. But like Mrs. Momsen said, I think a lot of us families, you know, kind of learned from the pandemic some of the challenges with virtual education and how we saw people come back so robustly and so quickly. And a lot of it is because it takes a special learner. It takes someone who really can, you know, be self-motivated and have a certain learning style where they can learn through that mode. And that's where the challenges occur, is when people who, you know, maybe want virtual learning because of some particular reasons, but it necessarily isn't a very good fit for their learning style or their maturity level or whatever it may be. And that's why I think the counseling on the front end of this is so important. And I know that's one of the goals that they have at the high school. Any questions for Mrs. Momsen at all?
I don't know if I should know this, but if they don't pass the course, do we still pay for it?
We do.
We do.
We do, yeah.
So about 1 in 4 students' courses, they don't pass.
Say it again?
About 25% of the time they don't pass the course?
Correct. And for the most part, these are elective courses.
Yeah.
Unless they're full-time virtual, then of course they're taking core as well as.
Do you think there's a way to help proactively screen those folks so that they can find a better fit before they get in there and don't do well?
We're trying. It's a work in progress. We have a lot of families who are very adamant about the fact that they want what they want, and we're trying to help them through that and help them understand that, you know, there are ramifications if things don't go well. Because in the course of 4 years, a student can take, you know, 7 classes in our regular, I would call it, brick and mortar school, and earn 28 credits possible when they need 25 to graduate. We have students in a virtual setting do 6, because we just feel like 7 is a lot. These are, again, not what we call synchronous classes. These are asynchronous, meaning students log in anytime. They are not getting instruction directly from the teacher at the same time. But teachers do offer hours of instruction that they're open for office hours, and then they can get the questions answered one at a time.
And to be clear, I'm not proposing that we charge families if they don't pass at all, just thinking out loud. And probably for some of those kids, they don't pass one, but they pass 3 others, and without this option, they're not getting any learning.
In some cases,
So-
yes.
Carl took my thunder. Yeah, I had the same question about, you know, the lower scores for the, it doesn't look like, like for instance, 277 of 354 courses are successfully passed last year. And that seems like an awful low number compared to what I would like to see. I mean, I would guess maybe 10 people might fail, but not so many. So, yeah, like Carl said too, I'd like to get the maybe subtract and figure out what they need and that kind of thing. So, thanks for the report.
Anyone else?
So as Dr. Zanowski pointed out, or I believe as you point out, the majority of these students are part-time enrolled, right?
Correct.
So there's a lot more variability in their other educational settings than in the case where you have a full-time student with maybe a schedule conflict. There's more infrastructure available for them if they need support. The students who are part-time, there could be many different backgrounds, many different other support systems that are present or not present for the students. Is that fair?
That's fair. We do offer, we have a specific staff member who is in the building every day, all day. And so if students are falling behind, or if they're just not attending, or if they're behind in assignments and that sort of thing, we offer the opportunity for them to come back in-house until they get caught up so that they could move back out. And sometimes we require it, depending on the situation.
Sorry.
Mrs. Thompson, would you say that one of the biggest issues with students who aren't successful is that they don't participate, don't attend?
Yes.
And that's one of the biggest problems with the virtual program, the virtual platform, is that, some students, I think whether they're holding a job or, doing whatever, they just don't regularly attend to their work. And that's one of the biggest challenges.
To Carl's pointing to that point, I mean, having taught both, split courses and also fully online courses at the college level, I was actually impressed by these passing numbers, because I know that if you teach a college sophomore fully online, there is it's almost a coin flip if they're actually going to participate. And of course, students in middle school and high school level, they have hopefully more family support than a college student does, right? Hopefully a little bit more structure, but also they need a lot more structure than you think a 22-year-old does. So I think actually, given knowing personally the challenges of keeping students engaged with the online material, I think that actually those numbers are actually fairly impressive, to be honest.
Any other questions regarding the virtual school report? Yeah, thank you so much. This is, like Dr. Zadowski said, watching the trend over time on this is fascinating.
Nice work.
Yeah, thank you so much. Right, next we have Menomonie High School course offering timeline for 2024-2025.
So board members, if you've been on the board, you've seen a very similar timeline in the past. This timeline that Brian put together is very similar to what we've used in previous years. We always have to work around spring break a little bit, and you can see that. But this is really one of the first items as we start planning for 2024-2025 is to get the requests from the students and to start building our course catalog, and then also start thinking about staffing a little bit. So really this is just more of an informational item for the board of what you can expect. Appreciate Mr. Drake and his team and their input on this as well. But unless there's any questions, this is for your information only.
Any questions from the board on this timeline? Seeing none, let's talk about early college credit program requests for spring.
Brian, go ahead.
All right, so this is a report that you see twice a year, once in the fall and then once in the spring. It is just simply a listing of the different requests that have come from students. You'll notice that the number of requests will fluctuate from year to year. Of note for this year, we have 182 requests for courses by 43 students. And while this is identified as the early college credit program, so courses at a four-year institution. For information purposes, we also put in our Start College Now requests as well, courses that students can take at a two-year technical college. And it's informational in nature, but you'll see that, yeah, those 182 requests are coming by 43 students. So both of those numbers are up, from some prior years. But one of the things that we have noticed over time is we have more and more students requesting multiple courses. They are limited to 2 courses, and in most cases what we found when we survey them is they don't want to be caught in a scenario where they request a course that then the course is full, because as registering as special students at the institution, they are only permitted to register if space is available.
So this is why we see some students with like 12 requests. They're not going to take all those classes. Okay, that's good.
And it's also of note, the district has what I would consider a very limited ability to deny the requests. It's just the way that the statute is written. But in some cases, a student may request a course that is denied because there is a comparable course that's offered at the high school. The student may not have been academically successful in prerequisite coursework, things like that. So we will not have all 43 students taking all of these courses.
Any other questions for Brian about the course request? That's a very interesting one to read through.
Can I ask, how is this funded when students take colleges?
Your microphone.
Students,
Your microphone.
how is it funded when students take courses through the college?
So the district receives a bill for that college tuition. They're in statute, and I would have to look up the exact dollar amount. It's been a while since I've looked at it, but there's an agreed upon rate and a percentage of what that tuition cost would be. In addition, if a student, it does not happen very often, but it does happen, if a student takes a course and does not pass the course, then this is one place where they are financially responsible for the cost of the course. If they don't pass it, or if they drop it outside of their op window as well. But it is a very good option for families and for the district, quite frankly, when there are courses that we're not able to provide. So, for example, you have a course that you might have 1 or 2 students who are interested in taking, and to be able to provide an instructor for that course would not be feasible for us to do. But what we typically will do is we watch this, and if we get a point where we have enough interest, we will have some conversation as to whether or not it would make sense for the district to offer a course or to explore some type of a dual enrollment offering. And we've done that most recently within our math department. We looked at expanding our dual enrollment courses at the high school to help provide this in-house option for students.
Thank you.
If there's no other questions, we can move on to our quarterly review of the district work plan.
So last summer, the board approved the work plan, and I think it has 24 or 25 major items. And in putting this together ahead of the meeting, I was actually quite pleased to see the amount of progress that's already been made during the first quarter of our work on this plan. Now, I'm not going to read through every single item, but I do want to point out a few things. We do have each pillar of our strategic plan represented in the work plan. Under Pillar 1, College, Career, and Life Ready Graduates, I would just like to point out the work that has been done at the environmental site. We've had a very successful fall at the environmental site, and with our new site supervisor, we've had a number of students out there visiting and participating in educational activities. I know Brian was out there, and he's going to have some pictures to share here at some point. But the site itself is in very, very good shape, and our students have had, like I said, a terrific opportunity to experience the site and to learn in the environmental educational field. Pillar 2, Student Social and Emotional Wellness. One of the items under there I wanted to point out is the mandated self-assessment and status of non-discrimination and equality of educational opportunities in the school district. This is a very, very robust item that needs to be done every 5 years, was it, Tonya? And this year, it is, what would you say, 4 or 5 times more in scope than it had been 5 years ago. So Tonya and her team and a number of people across the school district have been working towards this report that will be shared with the board before the end of the year, end of the school year. And actually, the report deadline was just extended. What was this, extended a month?
Yes.
Just because of the volume. I don't think it was recognized by certain people in certain agencies how much rigor and what they're actually expecting. Pillar 3, our talented workforce. We worked with our faculty already this fall, and we discussed the SDMA teacher compensation salary schedule and the possibility for accelerated movement on the salary schedule. Rubrics were created and a lot of discussion was had both with the administrative team and our faculty. And well, I think philosophically, well, there's a lot of good intent behind it. When we actually looked at putting it into practice, we felt that it just really was not the right thing for our school district at this time. So as you can see, the recommendation at this point is to postpone any adoption of accelerated movement. That's not to say that accelerated movement could not happen or will not happen, but it would happen more as it had been in the past, based on administrative recommendation to the board when needed. We just trying to put together one plan that fits all just created just too many issues, and really, and I know the board talked a lot about this when the goal was set, concern about, you know, something that's intended to be good, not having unintended consequences that were going to make the situation more difficult. And unfortunately, I think, you know, as we dove into this, I think that's really kind of what the result was. So that's where we're at on that recommendation. For parent and community partnerships, there's been a lot of work this fall, anything from streaming district events and all of that. But what I want to focus on is the work with the referendum. The referendum guide that was put together, I think, really helped explain to people what it is that the board has been working on this fall. Also, the survey went out, which we'll talk about a little bit later, but a lot of emphasis has been placed on that referendum work during the first quarter. And then in terms of facilities and operations, you all know that you will continue to look at energy efficiencies. The board will also be seeing an update to the capital improvement plan, the 30-year plan. That'll be coming to the board in January. But the major construction project at the high school with the restroom building and concession stand on the north side of the school has been complete, and we'll have a report for you on that as well. So again, a lot of work's been done. It's all been collaborative and a team effort, and really appreciative of all the staff members that have had a hand in this. Any questions or anything you'd like more information on tonight? The next report will be, I think it's end of December or first part of January.
All right, if there's no questions on the work plan, we'll move on to an update on the referendum survey.
So hopefully everyone received a copy of the survey either digitally or in your mailbox. We've had a really good response already, and we're not going to be publishing preliminary results in terms of what the certain questions are coming back at. But what I would like to share is that we're at about a 5% return rate, which already is statistically significant. We do anticipate that we'll be beyond 10% and possibly even towards 20% by the time it's all said and done. But we've had a good response. We have had a few people contact the district office, either where, like the survey says, if there's 2 people in a household and both people would like to take their own survey, we're able to accommodate that. We also have been notified by some households that did not receive a survey, and Jenny has been able to help accommodate that as well. So if you hear from anybody that did not receive a survey, the window still is open for another 2 weeks. So if we know about it right away, we can help facilitate that either through a digital survey or a paper survey. And then, as you know, we're planning to share results with the board at a special meeting in November. November 16th, Thursday, November 16th, I think is the date that we had highlighted. I don't know if anybody has that in their calendars or not. But we will send a reminder note. That's a Thursday, the 16th. And we will, I believe we talked about this a while back.
I know you did, but I just.
Yeah,
I've slept since
I'd have to look back, Amy, to be sure. I think it was a regular time.
I just don't remember.
Okay,
I remember discussing the regular board meeting time.
5:45, that's what I recall too. But we'll send you a reminder this week so you can make sure you have it in your calendar and save the date.
Thank you.
You're welcome. But then just a reminder, the idea is to review the survey results on the 16th with the potential of the board approving a resolution on Monday, November 27th. Any questions that anybody's had about the referendum or anything else with the survey that you'd like addressed tonight?
I don't think addressed, but I think Abe posted the referendum guide to one of the social media groups. I did see there was a community member who had a misperception on the language of the question, thinking that each year recurring, the number of dollars would be going up as opposed to, do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I heard about that too. And
I just want to clarify it.
Sure. Yeah, what the survey asks is whether or not people would support an additional revenue limit authority of $4.2 million on a recurring basis. And what that means is that it would allow the school district to exceed the revenue limit by $4.2 million, and that permission would continue on into the future. I do think some people have misinterpreted the word recurring as $4.2 million the first year, another $4.2 million for a total of $8.4 million the second year, and then another $4.2 million, and every year grow by $4.2 million. That's not the case. It's a one-time increase to the revenue limit authority, but that permission would then continue. So it'd be $4.2 million, but then that would continue over time, not continue to be added on, except for any increases allowed through state statute. Thanks, Carl.
The only thing I heard is, that about the survey in general was that some people, I said, I mean, 3 people tell me that they were concerned about the question of that sports and the arts were mixed together.
Oh, with asking people what they suggest that the school district look at reducing without the additional revenue?
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, and that's something that we're not asking the community to, we're not pulling the community on every possible scenario for making reductions. That really is kind of the categories that School Perceptions uses when they use their referendum survey. That was not necessarily authored by the school district in terms of trying to pit one thing against each other or group one thing together with another. It's really just trying to gauge community input and also to educate the community that without the additional revenue, these are the kinds of things that are going to have to be looked at. But certainly, we're a long ways from that. We do expect, and after tonight, we expect that we'll end up with a balanced budget for the year. And then, you know, if and when we start looking at next year, you know, that's when those kinds of decisions would need to be made, and those will be made by the board.
Actually, on the topic of those decisions, something just occurred to me about the previous agenda item, which is about the scheduling of curriculum decisions. There's a lot of decisions that are made in January and February, and just thinking through what we'll know at that point about what resources we'll have the following year. So I don't know if it's worth thinking about if it's possible to delay some of those decisions or give different options or what, but that's just, it just occurred to me thinking about that calendar, that a lot of decisions are going to happen in January on, you know, surveying students and what electives they might want to take and things like that. It might be quite tricky.
Yes and no. I do think we need to move forward with getting student requests. That does not lock us into a staffing plan. And our high school administration does a really good job when they get the student requests. Not only do they have the students request, their top choices, but they also have alternate choices. And even once the school year starts, oftentimes there's a handful of students, or more than a handful, that our counseling department works with to change schedules and such. So I do think the February 20th date buys us enough time. But yeah, decisions will need to be made quickly after that. I think the staffing plan is probably the biggest one, and to make sure that that one's not done until March. And usually it's not done until March anyway, so I certainly appreciate what you're saying, and I do think we have to be mindful before committing resources for next year when we don't know what our revenue will be.
Other questions or thoughts regarding the referendum survey? All right, moving on, we have a review of extracurricular staff contract requests.
So this is a standing agenda item for the second meeting of the month. Board members, you have the extracurricular co-curricular staff contracts requested. Are there any questions at all tonight?
Seeing none. Upcoming meetings, November 13th, our regular school board meeting. We don't have the 16th on this list, but we will be having.
We'll add that and send a reminder this week.
Right, and as a reminder, no school, November 20th through 24th, and a special school board meeting November 27th. Entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll move to adjourn.
Second.
All right, and adjourn.